He has made many legitimate five-star masterpieces.
Mhm.
This is not one of
It's
them.
not one of them.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures all.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve. And this episode, we are talking Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. Now, Steve, let's get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
You went to see this, and you came out and you immediately texted me and said, "That's 2 hours. I'm not getting back. I hate anime." Please defend yourself.
James, I wanted to like this movie so much. I've lived in Hong Kong, as you know, for 30 plus years, and living here, there's a lot of love for anime in this city. And
Yeah.
so walking in the video stores, there was always, Howl's Moving Castle or, My Neighbor Totoro. And I'm thinking I really should get into this. I'm a movie lover. This is something I should be liking. And there's something about the aesthetic that never appealed to me, but because of I've heard the accolades about The Boy and the Heron, and because of us doing this show, I thought, "No, I'm going to give it the good, honest college try." Came out of that and going, what are you? This was 2 hours of my life I'm not getting back. It kind of reinforced in me I must not like anime. I don't like the storytelling, what was conveyed in this film. I understand it was visually stunning. I mean, it's a
Mm.
gorgeous movie to watch. And so before people start throwing too many tomatoes through the computer screens at me, I want to give credit where credit's due. This is eye candy to watch. But there's people who watch, or I'm sorry, there's people who get into comics for the animation. They just love the animation. The story is second to them. The animation is what it's all about. I'm more of the story person. The animation is secondary to me. And so for me, the story was just too disjointed. I understand there's themes that the director is trying to convey. There's autobiographical themes here. I get that. I just felt this is a guy's personal dream night. And if I was dreaming, you're just kind of going from one scene to another with very little to interconnect them into a narrative that I found compelling.
Yeah, there is a kind of dream logic to the storytelling, if you like. It's kind of sort of free form, almost free association,
Right.
fantasy melange of different kind
Yeah.
of ideas. And what I will say, I will agree with you to a degree. I don't think it's Hayao Miyazaki's best film by a long, long stretch. I'm quite surprised by how enthusiastically people have really sort of jumped onto this one, grabbed hold of it. And I think part of that, as much as anything, is just because it's Hayao Miyazaki making another movie.
Right.
He's incredibly old now. He was born in 41, whatever that makes him now. And he announced his retirement about 5 or 7 years ago after he did the Wind Rises, which was his last film, which was just as enthusiastically embraced and lauded all around the world. And then he said, "That's it, I'm done." Inevitably, he couldn't leave it alone, and he did like a short film for the Ghibli Museum, and then he decided, "Okay, I've got this new movie to make," and it does for me feel very much like a sort of almost greatest hits package. That
Okay.
it's pulling from elements from a lot of his earlier films, as well as a lot of parts of his own story, of his own
Right.
life. So there is definitely an autobiographical element to it, which is interesting because it's not an original story. It's based on a novel, and the novel's called "How Do You Live?" I believe, from the 1930s. I don't think this really adheres to that story particularly.
Mhm.
In fact, at one point you see the little boy Mahito reading that book. That's the book, if you remember,
Right.
that that he finds that his mother has inscribed to him and said, "Oh, this
Right.
is for an adult Mahito. Hopefully, you'll read it one day." And that book is called "How Do You Live?" But I'm not sure that the story actually aligns. And then on the other hand, you've got the old wizard sort of great uncle character,
Yeah.
sort of who sort of built the tower from a meteor site or whatever it was, and lives in this kind of dream world, if
Mhm.
you like. And he also seems to be representing Miyazaki today at the end of his life. And there's a sort of curmudgeonly element to it where he's like, everybody needs to leave my stuff alone and go away, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen that has been interpreted somewhat cynically, I suppose, by critics in this part of the world, as Miyazaki basically addressing the animation community at large, particularly in
Mhm.
Japan, and just saying none of you are worthy enough to take up the baton, because
Right.
that's been a sort of a dialogue for years, and particularly in the last few years after he announced his retirement, is where's the next Miyazaki? Who's going to be the next Miyazaki? And there are a number of sort of solid, even better than solid, some really good animators out there. But this, some people have seen this film as basically Miyazaki saying, none of you are good enough. Stop
Right.
ripping off my ideas. Do your own thing. And it's kind of ironic that at the end of the story, the only person that the great uncle deems worthy enough is the young boy, and the young boy is also supposed to be a version of Miyazaki. So it's almost like Miyazaki saying the only person good enough is me,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
kind of get to kind of take over. So there's a lot going on, and I can see how somebody like yourself who's not overly familiar with the form
Right.
uh might find it a little bit kind of sort of impenetrable.
Disjointed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
impenetrable, disjointed. um
Things are happening for no logical reason whatsoever. It's just like a dream. Things just occur, and then
mm,
things appear and they disappear, and you move from one place to another with very little logic or understanding of why it's happening. Just like in a dream. Why am I suddenly here? Why am I suddenly there? Well, it's a dream, and those things happen in a dream. And I find watching somebody's 2-hour dream boring. Now, I feel other people have come out of this film, I realize, moved to tears. That
yeah.
this was an emotional and spiritual experience for them. And having had those experiences with other cinema, I don't want to steal that thunder from them, because I know how powerful film can be in achieving that kind of transcendence. It just didn't do it for me in this film.
Yeah, and I think that's true for me as well. There are other Miyazaki films. You know what this actually reminded me of, other than lots of other Miyazaki movies and lots of other Studio Ghibli movies, is the Wong Kar-wai movie 2046. I'm not sure if you've seen
Okay.
that.
No, I haven't.
Uh, okay, so that came out, I think, in about 2005, 2006, and it was, sort of quite warmly embraced, particularly in the West. But I think what I saw in it was the same kind of thing. I saw it as a kind of greatest hits package. It was Wong Kar-wai returning to a number of the themes and stories. I mean, it is a kind of sort of supposed to be a quasi sequel to In the Mood for Love, but there are moments in it and themes in it and styles in it and visual motifs all the way through it that draw from his body of work, from his earlier work. And I saw the same thing here, where too many of the big ideas and the big set pieces in this movie are just kind of repackaged ideas that we've seen in a lot of his work before. Now, if you're not overly familiar with his oeuvre, I can see how people are kind of warming to that or embracing
Yeah.
that, because they're not aware, or they're not been tired out or worn out by these stories.
Hmm.
But for me, and then I've also seen a defense of this being like, well, he's old now, he's established his thing, his aesthetic, themes, and so of course he's going to revisit them
Yeah.
again and again and again until
Yeah.
he gets it exactly the way he wants it. So I understand the defense of it, but I also hear where you're coming from, in that I think it is less than the sum of its parts, and I'm surprised that it has been as warmly embraced, particularly over in the States, as it has. I think I know why it has.
I was just going to set you up with a question on that. James, why was it more widely embraced in the West, and particularly in the United States?
Okay, well, I think one of the big reasons for it is that when it was released, I think just before Christmas, I want to say, it was also released in an English language dub.
Mhm.
That is not unusual, but I think that this one was particularly star-studded. You've got Christian Bale as the voice of the father. You've got Robert Pattinson doing the voice of the Grey Heron, a particularly strange character, it has to be
I was
said.
going to say it's not really a heron. It's
It's not. Uh,
the title of the film is a little misleading.
Sure, sure. And just to repeat, that's not the Japanese title. The Japanese title is
Oh,
How Do You Live? right? Which is this book. And I think that by naming it The Boy and the Heron, it almost gives it an air of a more like a child's fairy tale. I think
Mhm.
that is perhaps a little unfounded, or a little a bit of sort of misdirection. That character, I mean, yeah, I just want to talk about the cast very quickly, because Gemma Chan plays the sort of the new stepmother slash auntie
Mhm.
character. Willem Dafoe is in the Dave Bautista play various characters as well. Florence Pugh plays Kiriko, the young woman on the
Mhm.
who on the sailboat, who's a sort of reincarnation of the old woman who
Yes.
gets
Yeah.
sucked in with them.
Yeah.
Most interesting for you in the English language, the great uncle is voiced by Mark Hamill.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
He's
So I
got
did.
he's done a lot of voice work. He's really carved
Of
out a
course,
career.
I mean,
Yeah.
his Joker in the Batman
Yeah.
animated series is seminal to a lot of people. So I think that played a big part in it. So I think it opened, around the holidays, and it was in English. I mean, it was available in both, but it was in English, and I think there just wasn't a lot else out there, particularly for a
Mhm.
young audience. If you look at the Disney movies, or what the other animated films being released around the holidays, were weak. I mean, Wish, the
Mhm.
big Disney movie, was weak. So I think people opted for this one. And obviously it
Until
does.
Wonka came out.
Sure, but I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
specifically in the sort of the animated sector.
Yes. Yes.
And obviously it comes with the pedigree not only of this cast, but with Miyazaki. Even if
Mhm.
you don't really know his work, you understand the fact that he's good.
Right.
And this is gonna be of a particular kind of artistic caliber. And so I think it was a combination of all of those things. And yeah, I don't think that this winter season has been particularly strong at all. That, yes,
Mhm.
there was Wonka that did pretty well, but like Aquaman was a huge failure, and there wasn't much competition in the marketplace, is what
No,
I'm
there
trying to say.
wasn't. Yeah.
So I think it was a combination of all those things happening at the same time, and those in the know were obviously excited that there was a new Miyazaki movie, and yeah, it resulted in it, opening at number 1 in the charts in the
Mhm.
US,
Yeah.
which is unheard of.
Yeah.
Um, so those are the reasons, really, I think. Um,
Let me ask you then, if
yeah,
I was going to give Miyazaki a second chance and you would recommend
yeah.
the one that I should watch that would redeem my having watched The Boy and the Heron, what would you recommend to me?
Okay, first question. Have you seen any of his movies?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I think a great starting point, but for someone of your age, because some of his movies, simply because some of his movies skew younger and some skew
Mhm.
older. I would say that a good starting point would be Spirited Away,
Okay.
which is the one that he won the Oscar for about
Mhm.
20 years ago, when they
Okay.
introduced the Best Animated Feature Oscar in 2002. Shrek won the first one, but then the second year, Spirited Away came out.
Okay.
Um, and that's, I mean, it's not, as I've been trying to point out, it's not wholly dissimilar of this. It's about a young girl stops off with her family, and she wanders into this sort of small town area, and she gets transported into a kind of magical world. A lot of these stories have a kind of Alice in Wonderland element to
Right.
them, or a Narnia, a C.S. Lewis element to it.
Mhm.
I mean, particularly actually Boy and the Heron, because it's
Mhm.
wartime
Right.
evacuation into the countryside. There's not a lot to do, and then you kind of stumble through a
But
doorway
the
or
thing
down a
is,
rabbit hole or whatever.
The Boy and the Heron makes Alice in Wonderland look like a logical German anime where things,
Yeah. Yes, fair enough. Fair enough. So what I would say that the two big ones to go to immediately, and they're all on Netflix, by the way.
Okay.
So they're all right there. The two I would go to first of all would be Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke.
Okay. Maybe
So
we'll make a point of after I watch those, we do a rewind and we chat about it and see if I become a late innings convert.
okay, I mean, because I kind of get it, but I am somewhat perturbed by your fact that I don't like anime, I don't get it. I know it is a kind of sort of daunting, impenetrable monolith. If you've
Hmm.
if you haven't seen any, it's a bit like, I always compare it to something like Bollywood movies or something like
Right.
that. It's like if you've never seen one, it's like there's so much. It
Hmm.
can be quite overwhelming, and it's such a specific style. I mean, obviously there are different styles once you get in, but from the outside, it just looks like one great big sort of daunting prospect. I mean, the great starting point. Miyazaki obviously is a great place to start. Akira is completely kind of at the other end. That's hard, sci-fi,
Mhm.
post-apocalyptic, human cloning, get street gangs, total cyberpunk awesomeness. But Akira and Ghost in the Shell are the two at that end, and then I would
Okay.
say, the soft, cuddly fantasy, slightly scary, sort of supernatural stuff. Start with Miyazaki, and you've got Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, and then I mean the one everybody loves, of course, is My Neighbor Totoro.
Mhm.
But it is, I would say, it does skew younger. It's introducing adult themes to children, but I think it is introducing them to children.
Got it.
But I
Got it.
love it, and it's brilliant. And obviously, Totoro, the character, has become, an
Mhm.
icon in his own right.
Mhm.
He is now the logo of Studio Ghibli, and is arguably as recognizable as Godzilla or
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse or something like that in different parts of the world.
Well, James, what instrument or measure should we use to grade The Boy and the Heron? Herons?
Uh, Herons, parakeets,
Or how about
little
those little those little
little building
pre
blocks.
embryo things that are going up to be human?
Oh yeah, watus or waru
Yeah,
warus or
yeah.
something like that. Sure, any of those.
Okay. How many Watus would you give? I feel a little, I'll go first because I think
Okay,
everybody knows kind of where I'm coming from. It's hard for me to rate this because visually it's stunning. I get the professionalism and the artistic merit that Miyazaki brings to this film. But all I can do is grade it based on my ability to engage with it.
right.
And so I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 stars. And the two being, you know, for a 3 or higher, I'm saying you have to see it. If you're like me and this is not something that floats your boat, this is not something you need to spend 2 hours of your life watching. But having said that, again, there are some wonderful vignette moments that I can
Mm,
enjoy in it. It's hardly something I would give like a 1 star to. So I'm going to give it a nice, healthy 2 out of 5, not stars, but little things.
yeah, I think they were called something like that, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely reasonable. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5.
Mhm.
I mean, for basically the same reasons in a way. I mean, the animation is absolutely spectacular. I
Yeah.
think that at this point it's a combination of hand drawn and digital, but Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki in particular have always been great pioneers of traditional hand drawn animation.
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure where the distinction lies there, but it's incredibly sort of vivid and colorful and imaginative and original in its look and style, and it's trying to do something different. But I mean, I
Mhm.
just said it was original, but actually one of my biggest criticisms of it is that it's derivative of his body of work. He has made many legitimate 5-star masterpieces.
Mhm.
This is not one of
This is
them.
not one of them.
It's great that he's still working, but like so many, he's come to the twilight of his career, and it's just not quite as sharp as it once was. So I would sort of say it's not perhaps the greatest entry point into his work.
So what you're saying, it's the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny version of Miyazaki's work.
I quite liked the Dial of Destiny. I think it's maybe almost the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull version of it. But no, I mean, is it his worst? I don't even know if it's his worst because we've all had missteps. It basically just feels like the sort of 70th anniversary greatest hits
Mhm.
package, and you're like, yeah, but some of those early studio albums were much better. They had
Yeah,
more
yeah.
personality and a bit, sharper edges and all the rest of it because his stuff is quite provocative.
Mhm.
It is daring. It is demanding of its audience. This didn't feel like that at all. It
Yeah,
felt, I mean, and I know that for him it touches on some very personal elements. You know, his mother did die when he was very young. His father
right.
did run a sort of a munitions factory, and I think he was evacuated into the countryside when he was young, and things like that. So I think it is incredibly personal, but maybe that kind of got in the way, and he couldn't see the wood for the
I
trees somewhat.
I was gonna say that anytime a artist puts their their history, their passions into it. There needs to be a connecting point for others, an
Yeah.
on-ramp to be able to share those experiences. Otherwise, you're just kind of left going, what? And that's kind of where I felt. For me, there was no on-ramp that he provided for me so that I could kind of have some empathy and some kind of togetherness, some solidarity with these experiences he's obviously had. And so I was left just kind of going, when is this going to be over?
Yeah, no, I think that's the same. I mean, I think it started very strongly, and I sort of was I enjoyed all of that early stuff, with the fire sequence in the hospital at the beginning is
Yeah,
spectacular,
yeah.
and the evacuation, and I understood and could empathize with his plight, that he's
Mhm.
being taken to a new place with this new woman. Not only has he got like a new mother when he still isn't over the death of his real
Yeah,
mother, but he learns that she's pregnant and he's going to have a sibling, and it's incredibly sort of disorienting for him, and all of that I sort of really was able to sympathize with. But then as soon as he sort of goes down the rabbit hole, as it
yeah,
were, he meets the heron, and then the heron is exposed to be. And it's never fully explained exactly what the heron is. It's this
no.
guy in a heron suit, but it is still really a heron, or can be, to
Hmm.
do with some element of magic. I mean, I've seen the film a couple of times now because I did want to make the effort and watch the dub as
Hmm.
well as the original, just to see if it made a big difference. So I only watched the dub yesterday, having seen the other one, a month or two earlier, and it's still not entirely clear what's going on. I mean, I know it's magic, and that's supposed to be
Yeah.
enough, but it's such a weird character that is so significant without,
Yes.
a very clear explanation,
Explanation. Yeah,
that it is kind of sort of it does kind of sort of knock you off your balance a little bit.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's one of the key reasons why I found this one, less immersive, and
Yeah.
less. I was less responsive to it.
Accessible. Less
Yeah, yeah,
less accessible. That's James and I's view of The Boy and the Heron. Obviously, a little bit controversial, particularly for those of you that just adored this film. What do you think? We'd love to hear from you. Leave some comments in the comment box below, James.
yeah. And help me out. I feel almost compelled now to take Steve by the hand and give him a kind of little crash course in the
Mhm.
greatest hits of anime. Let's don't go too deep with any recommendations, because as Steve has revealed, he's basically seen almost nothing. So let's
Mhm.
go greatest hits. I'm thinking Akira, Ghost in the Shell, as I said, Spirited Away, Mononoke, My Neighbor Totoro. Where else? I mean, there's Makoto Shinkai, there's Mamoru Hosoda, Kon Satoshi Kon. There's a number of great sort of animated filmmakers out there that we can kind of get to, but keep it tight, keep it big, real milestones. If there's anything I've missed out, please do let us know. And you never know, we might start a whole little sub
Ooh.
sub series of baby steps into anime with Steve and Jay. Until
You
next time,
ought
see
to
you
be
We'll
later.
see how
in
that goes. Until
pictures.
next episode. Bye bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice.